and welcome to another evening with yours truly, Michael Cross, and an hour segment of Unlock the Door, where we'll try to explore current events from maybe a psychological point of view. Now, tonight we are going to deal with a whole bunch of different issues. I'm going to try to tie in surveillance. Well, we've been hearing a lot about that lately. Civil liberties, like the Fourth Amendment, pornography, Stasi, and drones, and maybe even squeeze Edward Snowden in there if we can possibly do that. Now, that's going to that should make for a very interesting conversation there. So I guess let's just jump right in and take a look at this issue and see how we can make all of this fit together. Now, first of all, let's talk about porn. And I just was looking at the internet here and looked up a site called the Free Dictionary. Pornography is defined, and I'm paraphrasing the site, the representation in media of scenes of sexual behavior that are erotic or lewd and are designed to arouse sexual interest. Okay, fair enough. I think most of us have kind of an idea of that. I mean, if you've kept up on anything dealing with controversial issues in the past. Now, here's the point that I'm going to bring in here. Something that's left out. And you know what that is? The idea of privacy. That's right. It's fair enough that this defines what you might see in media. But the concept of privacy is the number one issue because, I mean, come on. Married people can engage in all the stuff that someone can look up on the internet in the privacy of their homes. And, the thing that makes it all different is when you broadcast it out, when you remove the privacy, when it's no longer something that's kept behind closed doors and instead is shared with other people. That makes it that can make it at least pornographic. Now, here's an interesting thing, we go back to the porn thing. People that star in those kinds of movies, the porn stars, they voluntarily expose themselves. They get paid for it. They sign contracts. They make media deals. And they trade their privacy and engage in things that the vast majority of people would never dream of doing in front of heck, another person, much less a bunch of people who record it and put it away somewhere, whether that's, on the internet or in some theater or taking pictures. And that's why they get paid so much money, because the majority of people do not want to be exposed. Now, the thing that I find very interesting is that in light of recent news stories. Now, I'll go back and show that, hey, Edward Snowden, Edward Snowden basically told people a lot of stuff that a lot of people already knew. But the thing is, he at least gave it some mainstream legitimacy. Now, the thing is, I think what we need to do here is take a look now at the Fourth Amendment, and I'm going to jump back at that privacy issue real quick. Now, let's take a look at the Fourth Amendment. Very important part of the Bill of Rights. I know the Bill of Rights, I get this idea that, those movies, those dystopian movies set in the future where you have like an old man or old woman, usually it's an old man, telling his grandkids stories about what the civilization was like back when it existed, and the kids are listening. And I'm getting this kind of scary concept that, maybe 40 years from now, a lot of people that are now, younger, but might be in their 80s and 90s by then, will be sitting around the campfire or whatever is, being used to heat. And they'll be telling about what freedoms used to exist in the United States. And they'll mention something about the Bill of Rights. And you'll have the kids say, well, what's the Bill of Rights? What's the Constitution? And the thing is that it seems like this is all going away. things have certainly changed in the last 11 or 12 years. You know, it's changed so much. My wife was watching a documentary uh, about music, in modern music, and there was one female rock star, and she made a comment that after 9/11, intellectual creativity, including in music, was kind of pushed aside. That maybe the 90s, where you may not have liked the music, kind of the grunge and the rock of that era, um, had often had like an intellectual theme about it. Punk rock for sure. I used to work with a guy that was really into punk rock and would play all this stuff from that era. And the thing is that after 9/11, a lot of that changed. It was almost like people wanted to escape from thinking, and entertainment changed. I mean, it used to be X-Files set was getting copied, and you see a lot of shows that were kind of doing this X-Files conspiracy type thing. And after 9/11, that just totally changed. Everything turned into the government's here to save you, and the us versus the terrorist and stuff like that. So it's almost a dumbing down of the United States ever since this happened. And I think that's kind of scary, but the dumbing down, especially when it comes to the Constitution. And the problem is, it's not with the general masses or the young kids or something like that. It seems to be amongst the lawyers and the judges and the people that are supposed to be maintaining constitutional rights in this country. They seem to be the ones who've kind of gone off to some other agenda or whatever, because I mean, the things that people are getting away with now was not what we had prior to 2001. I mean, seriously, and it just keeps spiraling. I again, last year I was watching. I go off on tangents. I'm sorry, but I'll get back to that Fourth Amendment in just a moment. But I was watching a program about witch burnings in Sweden, and it was kind of interesting because I mean, your first reaction would be, why are they burning these women for being witches? I mean, didn't they realize this was atrocious? This was crazy. What are they doing? And then I started realizing, wait a minute. Humans have not changed. Humans are the same human beings of the last 6,000 or more years. I mean, they are the same psychological, biological makeup as they always have been. And the thing is that this kind of psychological hysteria that goes through populations, there's modern day examples of this. I remember back in the 80s when all of a sudden, I mean, you turn on TV and radio talk shows, and it was like all this stuff about satanic abuse. Now, I'm not saying that some of this might or might not have happened. All I do know is I was seeing figures of hundreds of thousands of people disappearing, and the implication being that they were out in the middle of the woods being sacrificed to Beelzebub or something. And later that kind of fizzled out. But during that time period, I'm sure many of you remember this, there was all of this stuff about high up officials that were secret Satanists, and it went down to school officials. And I saw documentaries where people were saying, oh, almost all the pastors and ministers and priests in the country are part of this conspiracy and stuff like that. And people were kind of getting into this. But that kind of faded away. I think because I think the FBI did some sort of study and found that it was all really overblown, and there was some lawsuits that were dealing with parents that were accused of things, and they actually went to court over it, and it was later found out that it was all implanted by psychologists. But the thing is that it just shows that you can get a hysteria that will grip a population, and it's almost like a mob scene, but in the mind. And with the thing with terrorism is, yes, it was atrocious, the killing of many people in the Twin Towers and stuff. But then it seemed like everything things that would not be considered terrorism turned into terrorism, and pretty soon it was just like, well, if you if you were, I don't know, caught digging up a tree in a national forest, for Christmas or something, and which was illegal, it suddenly turned into a terrorist act or something like that. And going into this kind of extreme to the other way, where things started getting redefined. And I'm sure many of you have seen these training things that went out to government, like police and stuff. That if you see someone taking a picture of a dam, maybe it's a nice, beautiful dam out in the woods or forest or something, and you're taking a picture. Well, maybe they're terrorists. Or someone's taking a picture of a train. Well, maybe they're terrorists. Or someone's got a sleeping bag in the back of their car, or they pay with cash all the time, and all this kind of stuff. So all of a sudden now it's like, ooh, watch out. Just like in the old days with the witchcraft thing, maybe you notice someone was walking out in the woods at night. Well, maybe they were communing with Satan. Well, now it's more like, wait a minute, maybe they're terrorists. We got to watch out for that. Now, I don't mind if people have a certain level. I mean, if you find out, if your neighbor is just like doing some really bizarre stuff, and maybe it is something you should turn in, that's fine. But if you're starting to look over your shoulder and starting to accuse people, that's a totally different thing. Now, here, let's take a look at the Constitution. Now, remember, the Constitution was not written to protect the people to protect the government from the people. It was written to protect the people from the government. That's a very important distinction, and it seems to run through the history of Anglo-Saxon culture. The idea that you can't just let some king, for the last 1,000 years, you can't just have some king who could just arbitrarily, like something in Alice in Wonderland, just kind of go off with their head, off with their head, off with their head, throw them in jail and just leave them there or something like that. This is something that was not seen as a very kosher thing to do. So, after the colonists had kicked out the British, and it should be noted it was, and their mercenary armies and stuff like that they had used here to fight the colonists, the Bill of Rights came into being, because the founding fathers wanted to make sure that the government didn't go bad. They knew that, you could get a whole bunch of really great people that started government, and then eventually people get in there that aren't so great, and things get just as bad as they were before. So they wanted to have safeguards. Now, here's something very interesting, and I wonder how many people know about this nowadays. Seriously, I mean, well, I don't know. Most people don't even know where Britain is on the world map in the United States. But this is the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, and it reads as follows. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched, and the persons or things to be seized. Now, I think it's quite important here that we take a look at the context of that era. No, we did not have emails, but you know what? We had mail. We had someone writing a letter, sending it via carrier. Usually these carriers were local people, but still, they were essentially the beginnings of our postal service, and they would take it to somebody else. Now, the thing is that the Fourth Amendment would have seen that if I, as a postal carrier, open up people's mail and I start searching through that piece of paper and I start finding things about so-and-so, and I start informing the whatever government magistrate there is about what this person's doing, that would be totally contrary to the Fourth Amendment. Okay? Now remember, this is just paper, but you know what? If we were thinking about it, electronic mail, isn't it kind of the same thing? I mean, it's using a different carrier. But come on, we're kind of getting into semantics here. If I were to tie a letter to a passenger pigeon and send it, but then the government grabs the pigeon, reads the letter, and sends it off, and then we're to come around and say, well, this was being taken by by the air, by an animal, so we had a right to look at it. No, that wouldn't have been, that wouldn't have, pardon the expression, that would not have flown in the era of the founding fathers. So we're taking a look here at some of the other things. Well, what about the idea that if a government official during that time period would have sent people out to spy in the windows of people living in a community? I mean, that would be their job. They would go and they would peek in when and try to remain unnoticed, and they would record what the people were doing inside their own homes. Well, of course. Well, first of all, they'd be violating. They'd be trespassing on your property. To do that, they would be actually trespassing, walking across your field or whatever. Secondly, I really don't think Madison and Jefferson, or even the most strict of the Federalists, would have supported such a thing. Okay, they would not have supported sending people out and spying on people that way, or setting up a telescope in people's windows and peering in on them all the time. Okay, so think about it in those terms. Okay, I mean, the thing is, the technology was different, but the principles have to be seen as the same thing. And then to take that a step further, searching you through your clothes when you were going to go on a boat or something. Okay, they didn't have airplanes, but they had boats. Searching through your clothes, fondling parts of your body. I don't really think that even Benjamin Franklin, who had a thing for the ladies, I don't think he would have liked that very much. I seriously don't see the founding fathers as being people that would have supported people doing the whole TSA thing on them. And at the same time, we hear these cases of cavity searches or X-rays and stuff like that. I mean, let's take this a little bit further. DNA extraction. I mean, how personal can you get than someone's DNA? I mean, to be able to see the building blocks of their very being, their physical being, the house of their spirit. You get those. I mean, yeah, sure. If you're a rapist or a child molester or a murderer or something like that, maybe it's a good idea to take that person's DNA. But just a regular person just stopped randomly at some sort of drunk driving checkpoint. And I'm going to diverge a little bit here too. Drunk driving checkpoints. I remember I was involved in Mothers Against Drunk Drivers when I was in college. And I remember there was a huge, huge controversy as to whether you could do checkpoints. Like, you have a highway and there's a bar that stays open till 3 in the morning on that highway. And that if you set up a checkpoint at both ends of the highway, you're going to be able to make sure you're going to see the customers when they leave that night, whether they're drunk or not. Now, I would support that in that case. However, that was a big controversy. There was huge fights about that back in the 80s and early 90s. There was a huge controversy about that. And now we have like routine checkpoints. It's almost like you feel like you're in one of those I can't remember the name of the Alfred Hitchcock movie where he's I think it's Cary Grant. I can't remember the female actress, but they're like in East Germany and they're having to escape, and they're on a bus and they're getting stopped, and the guy with the machine guns walking through the bus and checking everyone out and stuff like that. I mean, is that where we're going? Seriously, is that where we are going? That we're accepting this? And not for drunk drivers, but for any and all things. I mean, I saw a video recently, a news video, where there were some people refusing to take a breathalyzer. Now, I think the law, I can't remember what state it was, some southern state. The law was, it was clear that if you refuse to take the breathalyzer, you could lose your license. Okay, well, I can see that. Okay, if they're refusing to be tested, then maybe they could forfeit their license. But instead, what they were doing was they were tying these people down, holding them in a chokehold on this gurney, and extracting their blood. I mean, yes, it's a good thing to get drunk drivers off the road, but at the same time, when you are actually um, doing that sort of thing, you're tying people down to a gurney and extracting their blood. That just seems to go to an extreme that I don't feel comfortable with. And one thing that makes me uncomfortable is the fact that 10 years from now, that might be routine. I mean, it could actually be routine. But back to the Fourth Amendment here. And it says that um, describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, if we go a little bit, if we go into the future, to the present day, and we're finding out that they know everything that we are doing. In fact, let me quote from an article here. Now, this was before Edward Snowden, okay? This is what amazes me. Edward Snowden just gave confirmation. He told people what was going on, but at the same time, he's being vilified. He didn't give any information that has compromised the United States. I mean, even former President Jimmy Carter has said that this could be a positive thing, that we could get a conversation going and stuff about that. And and yet he's being vilified by the media. I mean, he's like suddenly. There was some article saying we have this love. It was kind of comparing the 1930s when a lot of Americans felt like they were being screwed by the banks. So a lot of Americans kind of rooted for people like Bonnie and Clyde and John Dillinger and bank robbers like that, saying that maybe we have this kind of fixation on liking the bad guy and feeling that he's doing something that's bad, so therefore we identify with it in some way, some sort of primal urge. That's not. I mean, he's not a spy. He's not someone that was leaking secrets that could suddenly compromise. He just basically said, this is what they're doing to everyday Joe Six-Pack all the time. That's all. They know what you're doing. They know everything that you're doing. And they're keeping a record of it. Now, going back to the porn thing, I mean, it seems to be something that I actually read somewhere where now colleges are starting to adopt courses in this because so many people in America watch it. So, oh well, I'm not gonna get into that. Anyway, there's a quote here from "The Internet is a surveillance state," and that was in March 16th. In CNN reported this, of all people. Yeah. And it states, welcome to the world where Google knows exactly what sort of porn you all like and more about your interests than your spouse does. Well, that's kind of scary in the sense that since now it's come out that the government has access to all this kind of stuff through NSA and so forth. They know where you go. They know they have records of your emails, your text messages, all your searches. They know where you are if you have your phone. I mean, they can track your phone. They can track in the newer cars. They can track where your car is. And I don't want to get into this just yet, but in today's UK Independent, there was an article saying that. You have to read it, but just type in Google and brain chips. And the idea is that in the future, Google's talking, some of the researchers at Google were talking about the idea that maybe people will have brain chips installed. And if you think back to the transhumanist interview I did with Natasha Vitamore a couple weeks ago, I wouldn't be surprised, but then, this may have some great advantages. Maybe you can wire into the internet immediately, and not even have to have your computer nearby. However, the thing is, what does that do to your privacy? I mean, maybe they'll even read your thoughts, but maybe they do that already. Maybe when you're talking about psychometric profiling, because you know what? If they know what your interests are, if they know how much time you spend on certain sites, if they know all of this kind of stuff, and it's stored away, it's not that hard to create personality profiles where they can read who you are. I mean, there's large companies do questionnaires. They're based to a large degree on the Jungian typology test, where they can kind of figure out, well, we'll put this person in this management position. Well, this person here is better for a creative position. This person here is good for a marketing position. This person, they have this kind of stuff because the answers to your questions can give an idea as to how your mind works. Well, guess what? If they know where you go on the internet, they know how your mind works. You don't have to sit there and answer a questionnaire, which sometimes you could fake the answers and get different responses because you can't fake where you've been on the internet. The records are there, and so they know. Now, could they use this stuff? Who knows whether they're going to use it or not. Oh, I just wanted to bring up something interesting, though, about psychometric profiles, and I don't know. I mean, are people aware of the fact that I don't want to get into the whole eugenics kick and everything like this, but it was actually Sir Francis Galton, the founder of eugenics, cousin of Charles Darwin, who started. He's kind of considered the father of psychometrics as well. The idea of tracking people and listing their characteristics to get ideas about them and so forth. It was kind of seen as kind of an intuitive thing before Galton. After Galton, it started turning into a science, and it started getting more and more and more refined, to the point now that it's extremely refined. And you add a computer that can tell you where you've been and what you're doing, maybe knowing where you go. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? And also, this is something that has not been pointed out in the press. I don't know if they're really using it that much in America, but they are in other countries. And that's the idea. All new products nowadays have microchips in them. Now, there may be some people going, oh, great, it's going to be, we're talking Mark of the Beast and Revelations and that kind of stuff. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But the truth of the matter is that in parts of Europe, they're talking about the idea that, if you throw away stuff in a recycling bin in the wrong way, I don't know if it's this refined, but you throw colored glass bottle into the recycling bin that's supposed to be only for white, and that label is still on the jar. Say it's a jar of jam or something. It's empty. It's time to recycle it, and the label is still on that jar. Then they can actually go through the label, scan it, then they can check that out with your what do you call it, if you used a credit card at the store to buy it, and they'll know who they can fine for throwing something away in the wrong recycling bin. So you're not going to even be able to get away with throwing stuff away the wrong way, even if your intention was good. Maybe it was dark when you went to the recycling station and you didn't notice you were throwing the wrong thing away. Well, the little microchip in there will be able to just say you did the wrong thing. And you know what? When it comes to technology, it's not like there's that much justice involved in that. And I just want to throw something out there that's kind of an irony to me. If I've read articles that talk about how many people, both over the age of 18 and under the age of 18, engage in sexting. That's when people will take a naughty picture and send it to a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever. Now, for those that are under 18, if the NSA is saving all those records in their database, and you know what? When they get this new database in Utah set up, I mean, welcome to Skynet. That's going to be a massive computer. I mean, just to cool the thing down, they're going to need massive amounts of water just to run through the system so the thing doesn't overheat. That's basically everyone's going to be in that thing. And the interesting thing is that, I mean, if you go by the law, if you find something bad, under someone under 18 on someone's computer, well, doesn't that mean that you can arrest them for that? I wonder how much of this stuff is stored on government computers. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, if you're going to go by the strict letter of the law, it seems that maybe there should be a case against the surveillance state, but that's not going to happen. Obviously, you're not going to have the FBI go in there and demand the files from the NSA. Not in a million years. But I'm just saying, if you applied the same rules to these snoop agencies as are being applied to regular people or even to businesses, that could be interesting. But anyway, those things are saved. So just to let people know. And now this is something that bothers me here to a degree. You look through the newspaper. Well, I mean, online. Who reads newspapers anymore? That's so 20th century. Anyway, you look online and you see something about a missing person. Now, the interesting thing is, I would feel really bad in some ways. Now, I don't like the idea that they can track where you are if you have a modern phone. But the interesting thing is that if you're a missing person, I could kind of see that if someone close to me suddenly turned up missing, wouldn't it be kind of, I mean, you'd kind of think maybe, some government agency could then just, I mean, how hard can it be, access that information and relay it, saying, well, this person's phone is at such and such location, so then you could at least maybe get an idea where they're at before something bad happens to them. But they don't release that. That's kind of, I feel sorry for the people who have this kind of thing happen to them, and they're sitting back thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, if they know this, they're thinking, why can't I get this information? And it's not available to them. So that's kind of sad. And then if you go into the other issue, well, first of all, before I go into drones, I've got to say this: East German Stasi. These guys kept files on tons of people. Okay, I've read as many as 10% of the East German population was in some way paid by the East German government to inform on their neighbors. Now, you never knew when you were being watched. So, and you also never knew which of your neighbors were on the payroll. So you were always very careful about what you said to them. Okay, I mean, it was a little bit more harsh than Janet Napolitano's Walmart screens. If you see something, say something. That sounds like her too. You gotta get that voice really deep. Nice testosterone-filled voice of Janet Napolitano. But the thing is that this really curtailed people's expression to one another because you never could trust anyone. You didn't know if your teacher, or if you're a teacher, your students, or you didn't know. I mean, people of all ages were on it, and so basically everyone complied for the most part, and you couldn't organize very well. This new system of surveillance makes anything from East Germany look really primitive. I mean, and I'll get into the, well, what about, the people, excusing this. But this system that's come in the last 12 years is the most massive, technologically advanced system of surveillance that we know of. Maybe Noah's time had it. That was the most that the world's ever known. Okay? It is so advanced. And we haven't even gotten to RFID chips yet. If we get that, I mean, then we'll know everything. But heck, your car, your phone, your computer, I mean, it's telling everything. So let's think about this for a moment. There's a famous saying that Hillary Clinton gave a while back. And it was, what difference does it make? That's going to haunt her if she runs for president. But unfortunately, she probably has a good chance of winning if we consider the state of American involvement in politics nowadays. But she stated, what difference does it make during the Benghazi hearings? Yep, what difference does it make? So let's think about this. What difference does it make nowadays? And that's what a lot of people would say. Maybe some of your friends, neighbors, and even relatives are saying, what difference does it make? I really don't care if they know about this. Who cares? I mean, they're not going to use it against me. The stuff I do is legal. So why can't I? I'm not worried about it. Okay, let's examine that for just a moment. I don't think Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, or any of these guys would have said, what difference does it make in regards to the Bill of Rights? Okay? Because you could do the what difference does it make on all of them. Freedom of religion, what difference does it make? Yeah, the Second Amendment, well, a lot of liberals will do that nowadays. What difference does that make? And search and seizure and not having yourself violated or your house ruffled through or your electronic effects to be trifled with. Heck, Richard Nixon got in trouble for wiretapping some people. I mean, Barack Obama wiretaps everyone, essentially, because everyone uses the internet to get their information to and from other people. But anyway, let's do the what difference does it make? Well, first of all, here's the difference it makes. The government knows what you're up to. Okay? Now, does that make people feel comfortable that the government can know what you're up to? And with the advanced computer systems we have, that they can interpret that and store it forever? They know what you're doing. They know where you are at. They know where you are visiting. They know who you talk to. I mean, that seems to be kind of contrary to the whole spirit of the Fourth Amendment to me. But maybe that's just me. I'm old-fashioned. The whole Constitution thing and all that kind of stuff. And let's see here. Some may be scared. Well, here's an interesting point. Some of the people might actually be scared to visit sites or maybe scared to take a stand because they do know that they are being surveyed. Now, I can't remember what president was or something. Was it Truman that said that if it affects, if you're scared of the reaction the government would have if you did something that it would be that makes it immoral what the government's doing, if you have to be scared of your own government? Well, think about this. If you're listening, have you thought twice about going to some site if you're exploring something? Okay, a lot of people want to find out what's going on, what sides, stuff like that, and they just start searching the internet and they start looking at a variety of opinions. I know that's not kosher. You're supposed to get your news from the mainstream media and the big corporate networks. And you know what? And it doesn't make a difference really which of the corporate networks, because when you turn on the news, it's the same story. It's just a different, got a blonde woman on one station and a brunette guy on another, and blah, 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 and they read it a little bit differently. So it should make it easy in case one of the stations goes out, you can switch on the other one and have the same news. But the thing is, not all people like to live that way. They like to check other sites. They think, well, what makes this person tick that may be part of such and such organization or something? I wonder what this organization's like. If you've thought twice about clicking that search on for that organization, just because, not because you're a member of it or something, but because you want to find out some more details about it, then that means that the spirit of the Bill of Rights is being curtailed. It's putting a dampening effect. And that's not just for citizens, but it's also for journalists who might want to go a little deeper, that might want to investigate a little bit more. Because, as you look at the Patriot Act, and basically it's one of those things that's so vague that you might have to worry a little bit. Do you set up an interview with Julian Assange? What could happen? Yeah, you never know what could happen. But that's the point. In the 1970s, especially after the Watergate thing, I don't think there was very many journalists that were really worried about, at least if it was political, setting up interviews and finding out information at a deeper level. But now there's a lot of journalists that are probably, there's some journalists have said that there's journalists that are scared to interview controversial organizations or people and so forth. And that's kind of getting to that whole Stasi thing, and that's scary to me. So if you've thought twice, and this time I'm not talking about naughty porn site or something like that. I'm talking about political sites. If you've thought twice about hitting click or putting a statement on a forum somewhere that you might belong to, something's wrong there. Okay? If it's a regular political opinion, you're not talking about some really wild, crazy, whatever, but I'm talking about something that's within political discourse that's not affecting, the health and safety of individuals in the country. Now, the psychometric profile that I was talking about, what does it matter? Well, what difference does it make? Do you really want the government to be able to sort you into a little category like an advertiser does? They sort you into your demographic, your race, your religion, your marital status, your sexual orientation, your age, how many kids you have. This is all done by advertisers. But I don't really worry if a car ad comes to me because I have a certain characteristic. So what? That doesn't bother me so much. It does bother me that the government can actually know what kind of person I might be. It might even be able to predict what I might feel about a certain issue or event or whatever. If we see how much things have changed in the last 12 years, what about the next 10 years? I think people should think about that for a minute. What difference does it make? Well, I think it makes a lot of difference. Now, well, again, I'm going to go back to that real popular thing in American culture. I think America exports almost all porn in the world, or at least the majority of it. But the thing is, the porn analogy. Are you really comfortable in sharing everything? Would you feel comfortable if you look out your window while you're taking a shower and there's a guy peeking in and taking notes or has a video camera? Do you feel comfortable if you suddenly, some sort of sci-fi type scenario from DARPA or something, but you're with your husband or wife in your bedroom and all of a sudden you see this little thing fluttering in front of your window, and it's not a hummingbird, it's a little drone, and it's filming you? Does that make you feel comfortable? I'm hoping that people don't feel comfortable with that. But then I'm getting a little worried that things like Facebook are not only making us more voyeuristic, but it's also changing us to have an exhibitionist mindset. People get on Facebook and they start putting things out there. They put stuff out there even if this would be embarrassing. Even at my age, if my dad was on the internet, there's some things I just would not put on Facebook, and people put it on there for everyone to see. All kinds of really personal information, people just throwing it out there. Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. And I'm wondering if this may actually feed into this whole surveillance society. Because then maybe when you have shared everything, oh, here's where I live, here's what I do, here's the activities I do, here's where I go on vacation, this is what my son does, my daughter does, my father or mother or whatever. Oh, here's what I like to do when in private and stuff like this. Maybe when you feel that way and you're just sharing it all to the world on Facebook, you don't care if the government is also monitoring things. I'm not talking about monitoring Facebook. I'm just saying the stuff I was talking about, to the internet and stuff like that. Maybe we're turning into a society where people don't care. Maybe it's going to be just like, with the porn thing, that before it was a dirty section of town that had the so-called red light district where, kind of the sleazy people went into during the 1960s to get their fix. But then with VHS came out and then DVD, all of a sudden the middle class became comfortable with it. Husbands and wives were renting it together, and it became an activity that, pretty soon it just started pervading the culture. Who cares? And that morality that surrounded it has kind of faded away now. And maybe the same things happen with the surveillance state. We're just kind of getting, the whole boiling frog thing. You stick a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. You stick it in warm water and turn the heat on, it sits there comfortably and dies. Well, this is what we're kind of doing. We're turning into voyeuristic at the same time we're becoming accepting of just letting everyone know what we're doing. So it's feeding into this idea that I have nothing to hide. And you get into a point where it's almost turning into if they know I do this and this and this, who cares? And of course, the technology is getting more and more advanced to where pretty soon you'll know everything someone's doing at any given time, completely. Now, I promised Oh, by the way, where's the quote from Jimmy Carter? Yeah, I wanted to share one other thing from Jimmy Carter. And he stated that America has no functioning democracy at this time. I think his quote directly was, America has no functioning democracy. That's from Jimmy Carter, a Democrat. And in a sense, he's taken a poke at a sitting Democratic president. Of course, it applies to Bush too. He started the whole thing, but Obama has taken it to new frontiers. The thing is, America has no functioning democracy. I think what he means by that is we're getting used to this whole idea that what difference does it make, First Amendment? What difference does it make, Second Amendment? What difference does it make, Third Amendment? That's what your neighbors and friends are saying. Who cares? Pretty soon it's going to be, well, we're going to take the guns. I don't care. Doesn't affect me. We're safe. Maybe some religions are just not playing the game right. They just don't know how to fit into the society anymore. Maybe we should close them. Whatever. Who cares? And if you're not worried, I mean, this is all tied together. It's a mindset that if we're willing to throw away the Fourth Amendment and say, well, there's a reason. Okay, there's reasons we have to get rid of we can't really go by that Fourth Amendment anymore. It's too extreme. Well, then the whole Bill of Rights becomes negotiable, and we might as well just get rid of the whole thing. And, government would work a lot more efficiently. Note, government would work a lot more efficiently. So just think about that. Now that brings me to my final point, and that is drones. Yes, those beautiful little things from every time I think of drones, I think of Terminator, because that's the first time I ever saw drones presented in a movie. And just to bring up something very interesting here. RT ran an article a while back saying that by 2020, and 7 years away, less than 7 years, 6.5 years away, by 2020 there will be 10,000 drones in the air in the United States alone. Now, Washington Times listed that at number, it will probably be 30,000 in the air by 2020. So you know what? I'm thinking let's take the conservative estimate of RT and the larger estimate from Washington Times and do an average. And that would be 20,000 in the air. And let's divide that by 50 states. You know what that is? If we go by the right in the between estimate, that's 400 drones per state. Okay? Even if you're in freaking Alaska, you're not going to be able to get away with doing anything outdoors without being monitored. And you know what? This technology, if you're going by Moore's theory of technology, when it comes to computers, this technology is advancing exponentially. It's not just, we might come up with a new little gadget to put on a drone later. No, the technology going into computers is expanding exponentially. The drones we have now, that we're using now over in Afghanistan and Pakistan, places like that, and also in the United States, are going to be like computers working on a DOS program in 1985. Okay? By 2020, they will be way more advanced. And so we got to take that in mind. Now, there was a show on PBS Nova a while back about a drone, and it was talking about the resolution. Now, they had it covered over. They wanted to keep it kind of secret. But this thing had such good resolution that from 17,500 feet in the air, it could notice what you're wearing, and it could also recognize a 6-inch object. They noted, they showed this bird that was flying over a building. They said, right there, it's 6-inch bird, like a seagull, and you could see it right there. You could see people waving their arms. That's from 17,500, and it records everything. So this drone can be flying anywhere. And if you want to find out what was going on a street corner, let's say a week earlier, well, I'm just throwing a week out there, it could be any time earlier, but a week earlier, it'll be able to access and you'll be able to see that street corner scene, or any other scene you want. Now, if you have 400 drones up in the air, many of them probably with this technology by them, you're not going to be, I would just suggest if you're going to have a romantic encounter with your wife or husband out in the woods, you better make sure it's covered over. None of those early 1970 romantic scenes in a meadow up in the middle of, the Rocky Mountains or something like that. You better watch out. Or if you have I've never seen the movie actually, but Brokeback Mountain, people have described it to me. And, so if you're a couple cowboys out in the middle of Wyoming and you're up in the mountains with each other, you might want to consider you might be being filmed at the same time. So think about that. Those moments where you just like to be out in nature and you feel like no one sees me, no one's here. I can do anything I want to right now in total privacy. By 2020, there'll be so many freaking drones up in the air, you're not going to be able to go to the bathroom in privacy in the woods. So who knows? Maybe they'll make some sort of law saying that, well, if you use the bathroom in a national forest out in the woods, then you're violating some law, some preservation law, and they'll fine you for doing it or something like that. Now you think, well, no, that couldn't be. That's going to the extreme. That would be like throwing someone in jail for collecting rainwater in Oregon. Who would do that? Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, there's a guy serving jail time right now for doing it. So think about that for a moment. So not only are they going to be monitoring your text messages, your email, your phone, your where you go on the internet, but if you go outside, they're watching you there too. And with modern cars, with computer systems in them, they'll know where your car is at and everything. And does that make people feel very comfortable? I mean, the thing is, with the job situation being what it is right now, one of the only jobs that's really expanding, with family wages at least, expanding is building drones and surveillance and these kinds of things. This is where the money is right now. And, Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex, and this is an extension to a certain degree of the military. But, if he was around now, he might be warning about the surveillance industry, government complex, the new axis of evil. And the thing is that if it's not regulated at this point, people are going to get used to it. Just like I said with the Facebook thing, people share stuff now that 10 years ago, if you would have said, well, I have this information on you, they would have been like furious. I remember I worked with a guy back in the 1990s, and I told him a lot of stuff was public record, and he was just like, nah. I said, I could find out what political party you belong to within 5 minutes. And he's like, you cannot prove it. And so I went to the phone, called up, found out what political party he was in, came back, said, oh, you're a Republican. And he was just like, wow, he was really upset about that. He checked into it. He thought that the county should not be able to be allowed to send this kind of information out to just anyone who would ask. Later, I found out you can look up court records and stuff. If you want to find out what kind of divorce proceedings your neighbor went through, and that's on public record, then you can go and read it and see all the juicy details. The thing is that was nothing compared to today. And the thing is, if people do start getting used to it, and this just becomes like, okay, well, that's what people do. Again, to coin the phrase and extend it, what difference does it make? Well, the thing is that you'll be seeing stuff that makes this all – you're going to be looking back at 2013 thinking, wow, this was like the Wild West. People could get away and do whatever they wanted to. And the thing is that if you regulate people to this point, and it gets through where you have so few congressmen and senators that are willing to question this. Sometimes you wonder, when I said the thing about they know everything, about you, you wonder how many congressmen and senators. I mean, this is not something that would be new if we think back to the J. Edgar Hoover days. You wonder how many congressmen and senators are maybe a little bit quiet about these issues because maybe they're a little worried about something coming out and someone finding out something that they might be involved in. I mean, that's possible. Now, there are some courageous Democrats and Republicans who've questioned this. You've got Rand Paul, who, of course, has questioned a lot of this. You've got Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon who's questioned a lot of this kind of stuff. And I think we need to put pressure on our congressmen and senators and say, something should be done about this so that our privacy is protected. Now, the only thing that's going to stop this mega corporation that's combined with the military, that is combined with some of the fear mongering that's taking place, the witch hunts, the satanic ritual abuse, that sort of thing. The only thing that's keeping these guys are getting their way because they're the ones that are the most vocal. But if a lot of people out in the general public start putting pressure on congressmen and senators, and I don't care if you're a lifelong Democrat, why vote for a Democrat that is taking these rights away from you? If you're a lifelong Republican, why do are you going to let these rights be taken away from you? These are things that you should feel adamant about and not just suddenly fall back into the two-party system and start thinking, okay, well, I'm going to support my party no matter what, even if the man or woman who is representing you is not representing you, and they're chipping away at the Constitution. But right now, I have to admit, I see on Facebook, I see people that are like hardcore Democrats, they support Obama. At the same time, they post things about the surveillance state, how horrible it is that the privacy is being lost. And, you try to say something to some of these people, and they're just like, the only thing they'll say is, well, the Republicans do the same thing. Well, we got to get past that mentality and stop being so forgiving to politicians and try to take us back a little bit. We do not have to sacrifice privacy and liberty in order to gain safety. Benjamin Franklin said, if you try to get rid of one if you try to trade liberty for security, you will lose both ultimately. And I think we need to pay a little bit more attention to what Benjamin Franklin said and not someone reading from a teleprompter. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. And I promise we'll do our best to have a very exciting show lined up for next week. Thanks for listening. Take care.